Hello, class. This is the lecture on He-Man. So back in the days, in the early '80s, He-Man was a cartoon, which was in a comic series, and then it became made into a television series. Also became an action figure toy that everybody played with. I remember the doll being in the store, this big doll with these gigantic muscles. So He Man was characterized by his superhuman strength. So actually, what does it mean to be a man? You know, so hegemonic masculinity. Remember in Selnow's readings, Antonio Gramsci defined hegemony as the privileging of a dominant group ideology over that of others. So, what then is hegemonic masculinity? R.W. Connell says it can be defined as the configuration of gender practice which embodies the currently accepted answers to the problem of the legitimacy of patriarchy, which guarantees or is taken to guarantee the dominant position of men and the subordination of women. So they have behaviors and practices that legitimizes men's dominant position in society. So let's talk about the breadwinner. According to Michael Kimmel, in early American magazines, heroism was defined by a man's usefulness and service, his recognition of responsibility. So between 1810 and 1820, he the term was coined to denote this responsibility, this responsible family man. The breadwinner ideal would remain one of the central characteristics of the American man today. So let's look at violence. Many members of the privileged group use violence to sustain the dominant. So they use it to sustain dominance through intimidation of women, intimidation of subordinates. Like, say, for instance, whistling at women that walk across the street. They call it like cat talking, approaching women aggressively. Then you have today like office harassment or workplace harassment, even rape, what men did to women, um, just taking control of their bodies physically. So also there was domestic violence. So there's verbal abuse, physical abuse, and financial abuse. This is before television was exploding. There was no social media, so things like this, sad to say, was tolerated, um, and it happened in all races. So let's look at the social significance. Historical writings has mostly been about men. So history has been about men and men what they conquered. A little bit about women, but mostly about men. The making of a man, positions of power and authority. So I always say, look at the world of academia. So if you look at the world of academia, most presidents around the United States at colleges and universities are white males. You look at the top 500, Fortune 500 companies, CEOs, so on and so forth. Men do rule the world, and through literature and through information, it's perpetuated that men are socially significant or on a hierarchy um, higher than women. So moving on, let's continue to look at hegemonic masculinity, and we look at racial supremacy. And what is racial supremacy? In this case, we're going to look at white supremacy, and supremacy is just thinking your race is superior to another. It doesn't mean just straight hate. It's just the thought that it's like ethnocentrism. You think your ethnicity is at the top. So white supremacy is just meaning like white folks are superior to others, and that's really your definition of white supremacy. So here's another thing we can look at when we deal with manhood and race. So Kimball states in his book, Manhood in America, and I know you don't have this text, so you can just listen to this lecture. In an important sense, there is only one complete, unblushing male in America, a young, married, white, urban, northern, heterosexual, Protestant, father of college education, fully employed, of good complexion, weight, and height, and a recent record in sports. Any male who fails to qualify in any one of these ways is likely to view himself, during moments at least, as unworthy, incomplete, and inferior. So you look at the savagery and the hypersexuality. They said men, we can look at the photo on here from Tarzan to James Bond. Like in these movies, they show men being rulers of, having physical dominance and just being the ruler of the kingdom, so to speak, the animal kingdom, like the, the lion on top of the mountain, so to speak. So hypersexuality is these men have these great bodies and they do all of these superhero type feats, and then women just woo over them. Like if they walk by, women almost just faint and just throw themselves at them. This is the image that was projected in popular culture from the start, like in film and in television. That's why you have different figures. It even happens today. You look at your Ryan Gosling. Um, some of these names are drawing. I'm drawing a blank on, but your superheroes today in the movies, or your sexy. I think Zac Efron is one. I know I'm a little outdated. I'm trying to give you the young version or your version of this hegemonic uh, masculine individual. So another area is technology. Um, that's even becoming like sexy today because we live in such a digital world. Like, Silicon Valley, if you have the application or you start Facebook or Twitter, and you make $1 million through money, you'll see in capitalism that brings about a certain dominance, so to speak. Let's move on. So we're going to look at the frontier. So the popular masculinity as an ideal. So the Boy Scouts of America was about the development of manhood. They laid the foundation for self-discipline and virility. Frontiersmen were almost without exception, like they were treacherous, murderers, worthless. These were the cowboys back in the day. Die with your boots on. So capitalism, this is the self-made man built in America, down with the effeminate aristocrats. So the soft talk of an artsy guy, we're talking uh, early 20th century, that faded out to the strong guy. So the emerging capitalist market in the early 19th century both freed individual men and destabilized them. Self-made men, individual achievement, mobility of wealth, success must be earned. Manhood, manhood must be proved and constantly proved. So we're going to get into that was a part of expansion too, of how capitalism started to expand the country. We didn't just have farmers anymore. Men were becoming entrepreneurs. So let's look at muscular Christianity. Um, that was a religious movement designed to bring manliness in its various manifestations to the church. And so that's also in Kimball's Manhood in America. So the goal of muscular Christianity was to kind of revitalize the image of Jesus and thus remasculize the church. Like I know a lot of churches were run by women, and some men saw religion as being weak. So they put forth better images or stronger images of Christ. So to make the church more manly and then make it more dominant. And so men look at that position as a position of dominance. So the strongman era is when men started to get in shape and muscles counted. And that still goes on today. You look at all these magazines, these health magazines, these movie stars, um, having, like I said in the other lecture, having pecs and abdominal muscles and biceps and triceps, um, having perfect bone structure in your face and your legs and your calves. You know, the muscular man is a sex symbol, and I'm not talking bulky like a muscle like bodybuilder. I'm just talking about lean muscles that you see on Men's Health magazine or the cover of Sports Illustrated or ESPN the magazine. That's the strongman era. So basically, normalizing masculinity, there's eras of masculinity. You're probably not going to know all these photos. Like being a family man was masculine. And as I said before, the pressures to maintain and provide for a family, it's difficult. But if you can do it, you are labeled as being a good man, a family man, a strong man. So being a family man, an ideal family man, and raising kids and taking care of the wife and kids was seen as something masculine. Also, your ability to attract the woman and score with the women, so to speak. Score with the women is just being a playboy, like Hugh Hefner started Playboy magazine, and it definitely was misogynistic. The way they just treated women as sexual objects wasn't cool. But you got a lot of clout if you were a guy was able to attract all the ladies. Well, let me say this: if you were a heterosexual man that's able to attract all the ladies, and it still goes on today. Big man on campus, um, the quarterback on campus, the star basketball player, baseball player, football player, soccer player, you name it, or just the good looking guy that's walking across campus. Your ability to attract women is very masculine, even today. And so in the 80s, you had Arnold Schwarzenegger and you had Sylvester Stallone playing out these images. The Terminator and Rambo. I remember I was like in eighth and ninth grade when these movies came out, and all the guys would go see it, and the images like this would spread across magazines. Women would make statements like "yummy," "look at his body," so on and so forth. Still happens today. It happens both ways. So muscle. This is kind of like the muscle era in the 80s. And then last, I am the king of my cubicle, the absolute ruler of this tiny realm. So men are about being in charge and being the boss. Um, that's all about masculinity and being on top. So today we have Channing Tatum and Magic Mike, which was a big movie. And these are some more 21st century male tensions that we have here. You still James Bond is still there, Thor is still there, so on and so forth. I'm running out of time because I only have 15 minutes per lecture, so I'm going to end it there. I hope you enjoyed it.